Now, this does concern me quite a bit. And when I say quite a bit concerned, I'm not like I'm going to jump off the Empire State Building or anything like that. I do think this is a bad sign for the for next year's economic cycle. We'll see. A recession is incoming for sure. We just had a recession, by the way. Q1, Q2, and Q3 of last year, 2022, were negative, which is literally a recession. But for some reason, no one called it a recession. It's weird. They changed the terms after the fact. It's kind of strange. But anyway, we did have one. And ironically, the markets were down 22%. It's like the markets are very, very prescient or prescient, however you want to pronounce it. It's weird, man. And now we're seeing the huge decline in the 10-year Treasury yield. That's a sign right there in of itself. So anyway, I'm reading this book right here. Bless you. Papa just sneezed. Oh, bless you. The Paradox of Debt. And man, this book just freaking kicks ass. And I'm reading, of course, it brought me back to this book right here, Richard Koo. So I can't remember who said this to me, or not sent it to me, but told me to read Richard Koo probably 5 years ago. Whoever that was, you changed my whole paradigm on economics. I used to be a staunch Austrian/monetarist, and they're not the same, I grant you, but a Milton Friedmanite. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. Inflation is always and everywhere too much money chasing too few goods. It's just not true. It's just the data sets otherwise, and yet all these people tied to their economic fallacies want to, follow like, oh, that's weird, man. It's like they have to, actually. It's strange. That doesn't mean I'm a Marxist, certainly not a modern monetary theorist or anything like that, but I tell you, the old ways of looking at economics for me are long since gone, because the data says exactly opposite of what the theories would have us, and that's just as crazy. Anyway, so I come across this. I read the Anonymous Conservative blog, so anonymousconservative.com/blog. Love that guy. He likes conspiracies, which I very much enjoy, of course. But anyway, a big fan of Anonymous Conservative blog. And one of his patrons, whatever it's called, the guy who advertises, my man, this guy right here. What's this guy's name? Right here, David Greenberg. And he does the daily financial trends page. And if there's ever a guy who knows about money, it's a guy named David Greenberg. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? How dare you, Josh? How dare you? That sounds... All right, my man Greenberg kicks ass. I love this guy. So anyway, Japanese GDP plunges as real wages continue to decline. In the third quarter, the Japanese economy contracted by almost 3%. As household consumption was weighed down by inflation and corporate investment slowed. And people say, that shows you crowding out. The crowding out is such a fallacy, dude, but I'm not going to get that in this video, but silly. Weighed down by household consumption was weighed down by inflation. Right. The fourth quarter saw GDP shrink by 300 basis points, which was a downgrade from the originally estimated 2.1. Why? Weakness in personal consumption is likely to continue for the foreseeable future, as real disposable income is likely to extend its decline, which is a factor in sluggish consumption. This is Japan, the fourth largest economy in the world. All right, so I just want to hang tight for that because this is important. Which brought me back to this book, Richard Koo's The Holy Grail of Macroeconomics. I just want to share with you something here. Monetary policy is ineffective when there is no demands for funds. All right, let's see. Academic economists, both in and outside of Japan, have argued ceaselessly that the recession, that's like a 2 decades recession, could have been avoided if the Bank of Japan had been more skilled in the administration of monetary policy. These views are frequently voiced by clowns as the IMF, the World Bank, and whatnot. Although it's never been explicitly stated in the economics literature, the efficacy of monetary policy is based on a key assumption: the existence of willing borrowers in the private economy. But after the bubble collapsed in Japan, not only were there no willing borrowers, existing borrowers were paying down debt, and they were doing so when interest rates were at zero. The existing borrowers said, I don't care what the interest rates are, I'm paying down debt, because they did not want to be leveraged. That's what happened in the 1990s. They got smoked with leverage. They said there's no place to turn. We got to never let that happen again. So when the entire private sector is paying down debt, bank deposits lessen and the money supply contracts. In the absence of borrowers, debt repayment will reduce the money supply, almost dollar for dollar. During the Great Depression, the U.S. monetary supply shrank by 33% as businesses and households drew down their bank deposits to pay back loans. Interesting, is it not? Yes, it is. So in the absence of private borrowers, and what does that mean? Check this out. Borrowing by the private sector turned and stayed negative in 1998 and basically throughout, while net borrowing by the public sector was consistently positive. What does that mean? Is the Japanese private citizens and businesses weren't borrowing. Not only were they not borrowing, they're paying down debt. And we just saw right here. Watch. Weakness in personal consumption is likely to continue for the foreseeable future. Weakness in personal consumption. I cannot stress enough how important personal consumption. Watch this. Let me show you guys something. Check this out. From this book, we have a link to a website called Paradox of Debt, which Richard uses. And by the way, Richard's got 6 kids, so he's a legend. I'm not sure how many grandkids he got, but anyone's got 6 kids is a legend. My man Tom out there in Pennsylvania's got 7 kids and like 1 million grandkids. My man John Scott up there in North Dakota, I think he's got 8 kids and 1 million grandkids. Legends. All of you guys, legends. And Tom and I don't agree on a lot. John Scott and I don't agree on a lot. We agree on a lot, Tom and I, but in terms of what this world is, in terms of what the science has said, we don't agree, if you know what I'm saying. But that's all good, man. John Scott doesn't agree with me on some stuff, but it's okay. We can still be buddies. And if I was a drinking man and I could drink a pint of Guinness, I'd take Tom and John Scott out to drink a pint of Guinness. Hell, my man Pulverizer would probably take for a pint of Guinness. But I can't. I can't. There's no such thing as 1 pint of Guinness for your old buddy Josh. It's a whole damn keg, if you know what I'm saying. So I can't do it. So sorry, Tom. Sorry, John. Sorry, Pulverizer. You guys can't be drinking with your old buddy Josh. Now, Jeremy up there, on the other hand, in Maine, Jeremy can't drink with him either. You know why? Because Jeremy's a young guy. He's still in the Army National Guard. So, look, I don't want to have to tell young men in the Army National Guard to do push-ups. That's not the way I roll. I'm not a command sergeant major. I'm just old Private E1 Snuffy Josh. Anyway, so that's not funny. It's pretty funny. So we're going to go over here to, hold on a second. We're going to go to, we got the charts here. One second. Oh, go to figure 2.8, which is U.S. debt profile. All right. Figure 2.8, and right here, we're going to see public debt is right here. Public debt. That's government debt. Private debt is right there. Private debt. Look how much private debt dwarfs public debt. And look at our total debt right there. So here's public debt, and here's private debt. Not literally since 2005. Basically no increase in private debt. Public debt has increased drastically, but private debt hasn't. And look right here, hardly any increase at all. Isn't it interesting? This is relative GDP, by the way. Now you can say it's because, well, I don't know what you can say. GDP is increasing. It's just not. It's not increasing. So if private debt isn't increasing and it's dropping, which it is, this is the United States, not Japan, and public debt is increasing, what does that tell you? Well, again, going back to Japan's model, we see right here, even though Japan's private sector was continuously paying down debt from 1998 and onward, the money supply not only failed to contract, it actually expanded at an annual rate of 2 to 4%. The seemingly contradictory phenomenon is because basically what's happening is the government was printing money, was borrowing to try to replace the money that was coming in from the private sector, but it didn't matter. There was still a massive recession in Japan for decades, dude. Even though the monetary supply, the money supply, M2, was increasing, it was based on the back of the public sector, not based on the back of the private sector. And the private sector is what drives growth. Without private sector, we don't have growth. Without growth, we have recession. That's just a fact. And without significant growth in private, we're not going to have much. Without significant borrowing in the private sector, you, me, and the corporations, whatnot, we're going to have recession. The question is, will it dwarf the amount of money that the government can print? Because look at all the money the government printed, and yet we still had no growth. 5.2% this last quarter. Okay. we'll take it, but that's a one-shot deal, man. I mean, you think that's going to keep going on? Check this out too. Anyway, so I just want to show you here's public debt hasn't done anything, and we see with our own very eyes public debt, public consumption, and you got to read the book. Without personal consumption, we're not getting any growth. We're not. Crazy. So check this out, by the way. 1950 total debt to GDP 142. Come all the way now down here to 2020, 294. 1950, total debt to GDP, private debt to GDP was 56%. Public was 86%. Now we fast forward right here, 1955, private debt to GDP took over public debt to GDP. And this would be after the great deleveraging after World War II. And it's always been like that ever since. Look at this. Private debt to GDP right there versus public debt to GDP. The interesting thing is right here. This is what's interesting. The bond market got decimated from 1948 to 1968. Decimated. The stock market did great from 1948 to 1968. Then did nothing from 1970 to 1982, basically. The bond market didn't do either. But then the great debt explosion happened, basically 1980, Ronald Reagan, and going forward. We had pretty significant GDP until right there. The private consumption just fell off a cliff. Again, private debt to GDP dwarfs public debt to GDP. I can't stress this enough. Here it is, 165 to 129, 170 to 133. So check this. This is the Anonymous Conservative blog, and we're going to go down to, I want to share with you guys something, anonymousconservative.com/blog. Now here's something that is very, United States isn't in a recession, but California is. Let's see here. This is from the Legislative Affairs Office, California Legislative Affairs Office. Under the subheadline, California entered a downturn last year. Now, you might not think California doesn't matter. It is. It's like the fourth largest economy in the world. I know I said Japan, but I think if you factor in California, I think California is actually a bigger economy than Japan. It's huge. I mean, they got what, 1 million freaking billion people living there. It's insane because there's 1 million billion people spending money. California businesses had much less funding available to expand operations or hire new workers. These mounting economic headwinds have pushed the state's economy into a downturn. The number of unemployed workers in California has risen nearly 200,000 since the summer of 2022. That has resulted in the state's unemployment rate jumping to 4.8%. It goes back to unemployment rates in 1978. It explains each time California unemployment rate triggered the SOM recession indicator, what the hell that is, explains that the start of recession when the 3-month moving average of the unemployment rate rises by 0.5%. Anyway, California shows triggering the SOM recession indicator this year in 2020 and during the Great Recession of 2008. Whether the recent weakness will continue is difficult to say, says the Legislative Affairs Office. Anyway, I tell you, man, I don't know. I mean, who knows? All I know is you look at personal consumption, it's going to be dropping. It has been dropping relative to. I mean, look, if you're having a hard time buying ribeye, you're not going to buy ribeye. You're going to buy ground chuck instead. If you're having a hard time buying ground chuck, you're going to buy friggin' tofu instead. Yeah, it's just this is called replacement substitution effect. You're going to stop buying the things you normally would splurge on and buy the things you need. You start paying down debt. And that is a concern. Like, I don't know. It could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know what it means. I'm throwing it out there to say, if I were you, I'd start building cash, man. Again, especially getting 5% right now. Let's take a look at what the 10-year Treasury is doing this morning. On Friday went up. Let's see what it's doing today right now. So 10-year Treasury. I don't know what else of a bellwether you could possibly see than the 10-year Treasury. And it's just, I mean, look at this, dude. Yeah, it's up a little bit today. No, actually a little bit there. But look at this. That's a pretty significant decline right there. Now, you have a little bit of a bump right there, but look at that. That's telling you something. Look, what do you do to be prepared? You got to have your debt paid. You got to have your debt paid. It's just a fact. Should you friggin', I don't know, overturn everything to friggin' pay off your debt? No, not necessarily. But if you got If you're thinking about borrowing, I'd tell you to think twice. The last thing we need is more debt. We need more equity, less debt. All right, love to your thoughts. Let me know what's going on your end, and don't forget you can buy these books. It'll blow your mind in your economics. I'm telling you right now, it will. That's why you got to read. Don't just listen to idiots like me. Read for yourself. Come to your own conclusions. I don't say right. Who knows? But my goodness, the idea of crowding out, of monetary policy, government spending leading to low interest rates. It's just the facts are different. They just are. We glom on to these ideas that we just can't shake because we create a career out of it. And I'm okay to shake it. I am. Because I say, no, I want to let the facts guide me, which is why I said, I'm not going to take your, you know what, in 2021, warp speed Trump, you kiss my big fat behind. Sniffy Joe, you kiss my big fat behind. I don't care if Republicans pushing or Democrat. I ain't trusting any of these fools. That's a doggone fact, and you shouldn't either. Even me, you shouldn't trust me either.